Welcome to Talk with Tareen. Thank you for joining our conversation today. Wherever you are tuning in from, hope you're having a fantastic day. Our conversation today will revolve around being a good leader, having the courage to take the next step professionally, as well as how we can keep our skill sets ever revolving and relevant in today's fast-paced market economy. Anyone starting out in their professional journey, the choices that a person makes are so very important. At the same time, it is important to stay up to date with industry knowledge and trends, as well as being aware of the surrounding environment that a person operates on. Having the courage to take the risk to achieve a goal, being compassionate, all equates to a successful life, both professionally and personally. With that, let me bring out our guest for today's Talk with Tareen, Mark Robinson. Over the years, Mark has worked in some top-tiered companies in leadership position, and more recently, Mark has transitioned into a role of an educator. Today, we are extremely excited to hear Mark's perspective on leadership, keeping oneself relevant in this marketplace, also the benefits of being the perpetual student in this ever-changing world landscape. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, George. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on your show today.
Very good, Mark. Thank you for joining us as well today. So let's start our conversation talking a little bit through the journey that you have taken professionally so far. How did you start your professional life? Walk us a little bit through that.
Well, I think most everyone face they look at what they are passionate about in life, but certainly our schooling is pretty much dictated by our local government. So we have progressed through our various preschool programs. At some point, we have to make a decision about what we want to do the rest of our lives. And so I'm a passion business at an early age and pursued that in my college career. I am considered a professional student.
Very good, Mark. So when you worked through your ExxonMobil experience, Mark, I believe you went through a significant merger and acquisition experience. So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced during that time.
Yes, in fact, I did go through a rather extensive merger and acquisition scenario. I worked for Mobile Corporation. And in the late 1990s, there was a merger of equals between Exxon and Mobil. And even though that was a very exciting time of bringing two companies together, it was also very scary. Because in any merger acquisition, you don't know what the future holds true as the individual employee. So I was very lucky that in my ExxonMobil years, I had pursued my MBA degree. because I wanted to prepare myself for the next opportunity, which did arise as I spent some years following the merger between Exxon and Mobil. At some point, that I had to move to Washington, D.C. to move to Houston, Texas. And I didn't move with my young family to a different state where I had no support network. And I was lucky to, with 4 weeks, find a new position at Deloitte.
Right, right. That's an excellent point you brought up, Mark. Once you move to Deloitte, that is one of the top tier consulting companies in this world. So that must have been a little bit different environment than being in ExxonMobil. Talk to us a little bit about your professional journey during that time.
Well, I would say in terms of international experience, at ExxonMobil, we had relationships with foreign companies, for example, Saudi Arabia, and several firms in the Middle East and Nigeria. So I got to meet a lot of different people around the world, from those countries, and then ended up working for Deloitte. I was able to travel a lot more extensively throughout the world. So I became very familiar and very comfortable with international culture. From Asia Pacific, the Middle East, Africa, Latin America. So it was an exciting time to work within both organizations.
Very good, Mark. And right now, you are in a role of an educator, Mark. Walk us through a little bit how you transition from your corporate side of things to being an educator. That must have been quite a bit different experience from what you did before and what you're doing now.
Yes, it's a rather significant change of type of company. But as it turned out, both of my parents served in the Navy, and they were always big on education. Certainly the Navy and the military is a great place to learn new leadership skills and new skills in general. So I was able to, parlay their interest in education with my own interest. And at some point in my life, I thought I would be an educator. I did not know where, I did not know when, but here I am a number of years later, leading an MBA and a BBA program at iGlobal University. So I've been able to bring my international corporate experience to the international and virtual classroom.
Excellent, Mark. So, as you mentioned, Mark, currently you're part of iGlobal University School of Business. Tell us a little bit about that organization, please.
Sure, my pleasure. iGlobal University is a for-profit institution serving basically the Washington, D.C. metropolitan region, but as an international school with a growing domestic group of students. We serve students literally from all over the world, from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Colombia, Peru, many countries in the Middle East and North Africa. So it's a really great experience as an educator to be learning about all of these cultures. It's basically definitely a two-way street, right? I teach them about how to gain skills in the American business marketplace, and they in turn share with me their experiences from their own countries, many of which I have visited, but many of which I have not visited. So for me, it's a two-way exchange of information, which I really love.
That is fantastic, Mark. And I am so glad that you brought up the importance of enhancing skill sets and being relevant, and how all these students are in their path of doing just so. So let's talk a little bit through the importance of this keeping a person relevant in today's world. What's your thought around that, Mark?
Well, I think an important element here is being able to read what we might call the industry tea leaves, right? Of predicting or at least having some knowledge of what may be happening in the marketplace. For example, it wasn't that long ago when artificial intelligence was a very new concept, perhaps not in the IT field, but in the business world. But artificial intelligence, machine learning has begun to infiltrate, if you will, so many industries that I had a very good boss at ExxonMobil who told me once upon a time that he said, Mark, every 3 to 5 years you have to be able to reinvent yourself. And 30 years ago, I thought, well, what does he mean by reinventing yourself? Well, as I've become an educator, I now clearly understand that perhaps every 3 to 5 years, you do have to reinvent yourself with new skills. And it doesn't have to be a degree. It could be a certification program. It could be a degree. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn Learning. And so even though my background and academic credentials are in international business and marketing, there is so much more opportunity out there to learn these new skills to make sure that you are reinventing yourself, but also as a employee of a company, you are constantly re-engineering yourself to have these new skills to meet the new demands of the marketplace.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Technology revolution is the time that we are living through. So many new innovation is happening almost every day. And throughout this thing, the organizations are going through a bit of transformation as well, with the job descriptions they have, the type of skill set that they need, and so on. And Mark, I'm so glad you spoke about the resources that are available for us in the online format, what we can take advantage of. Because to your point, being relevant in today's job market is one of the biggest important thing. So let's expand on that a little bit too, Mark. We talk about keeping oneself relevant. So what about some of the soft skills that a person should develop for themselves to be in a leadership role, or even the communication skill, the importance of it? What are the relevancy of those skill set to keep ourselves relevant in today's market?
That's a great question, Tareen. And throughout our traditional educational journey, right, we've always been taught about the hard skills, being able to pass a course in accounting or economics, perhaps not our favorite subjects because there might be some math involved. But the hard skills are, sort of what gets your foot in the door of some of these companies. However, it's really the softer skills, the emotional intelligence, the grit, the resilience of having some failures in life and being able to bounce back. I would say the number one skill that we all need in the workplace, and especially students who may not have been exposed to this American culture or perhaps any culture they may be visiting. Communication is key. You have to be able to speak the language. You have to be able to influence people with your passion, with your ingenuity and innovative thinking. So these softer skills are really important. Probably the biggest one in terms of communication is either being a team member or being a team leader. And in this ever-growing, evolution of corporate business, at Deloitte, I had responsibility over about 60 different marketers from around the world. And the question becomes, well, how do you manage people when they are not in front of you in your office or next to your office? And the key thing is you have to hire the right people who can make it happen. But you also have to be a leader that says, these are the expectations I have from you. It's fairly easy to get around the different time zones. What's key is being able to motivate and empathize with people, which is a soft skill, so that you can keep the team moving forward to accomplish whatever goals that they might have.
Thank you for that. You brought up such a good point, Mark. In this technology revolution kind of time, as well as having the soft skill, even the communication skill, it is so important. For example, you and me are talking through this interview online, which is almost we are part of the technology revolution that took place. And so in this pandemic time in last 2 years, the ways of interaction changed so much. What we used to do face to face with our colleagues last 2 years actually pretty much forced us to interact online. So to your point, communication skill itself is so important. What are some of your thoughts, Mark, for the way that we changed doing business from 2 years ago through the pandemic, and how some of the organizations are shifting the ways they work?
Well, that's a great question, Tareen. As you say, in the pre-COVID era, right, we enjoyed that physical camaraderie within the office. We could talk about our favorite sports team or perhaps what we may have watched on TV or Netflix the night before. But certainly during the pandemic, we've lost a great deal of that physical connection. But so, even through these digital tools that we're talking through today, right, we do have that communication effort. We still miss the old connections to our physical, our physical beings, you might say, with our friends and colleagues. One of the things that we've had to learn about is certainly, number one, how to use the software correctly. And there is definitely a train of thought about how to give yourself an executive presence when you work from home. And let's face it, there's a lot of companies now going back into the physical workplace. I think many other jobs will remain remote. So not only can we just simply log on, but those key traits of being an influential leader, showing compassion for your fellow employees, whether they're team members or you manage them. We still need those skills in terms of managing our teams and frankly, managing each other. So it can be done. It just takes a new way of working and a new way of thinking about this important topic.
Absolutely. Reinventing yourself as you move forward, learning new skill set, and keep ourselves updated. Excellent point, Mark. Mark, as leadership development is such a big thing for you, I'm sure you have a few recommendations for our viewers on some of the literature that they might want to take a look at, which might help them enhancing some of their leadership skill set.
Sure. I always think great examples of leadership. I would say one of my favorite books, perhaps at the top of the list of my recommended reading list, is Winning by the late Jack Welch. If you do not know Jack Welch, Jack was a 40-year employee of the historical company General Electric, now called GE. And in his book, Winning, it is a truly, really beneficial book because the entire book is based on Jack's experiences of working at GE. For his first 20 years, he was an employee, working himself up the corporate ladder. And the last 20, he was the CEO of GE. In fact, Fortune magazine called him the CEO of the century. And once you read Winning, I have no doubt you will agree with me. He was the CEO of the century, and some of these leaders, the legacy is what's important. Not only, Jack, did he lead them through some turbulent times, but he inspired and mentored many of today's corporate leaders from places like Boeing and Home Depot. So that's his lasting legacy. But Winning is an absolutely fantastic book, all practical information. So I highly recommend Winning by Jack Welch. The other one that I feel is very important too is John Maxwell's The 5 Levels of Leadership. And although Mr. Maxwell does not have the corporate experience as did Mr. Welch, John Maxwell has raised money for many churches, many causes, and his 5 levels of leadership have been taught, I would say, throughout the Fortune 500, perhaps the Fortune 1000 group of countries. So John Maxwell's The 5 Levels of Leadership would be my close second choice for a really good and inspiring leadership book.
Recommendation, Mark. Thank you for that. So, Mark, I understand that you also have a podcast out there. My question to you is, how did you start on that venture? What interested you in starting that podcast up?
Well, I think the Executive Insights podcast here, sponsored by the School of Business at iGlobal University, as a very small school in a very big market here within Washington, D.C., I needed some innovative way to stand out from all of the other universities here in the region. And so what I took upon myself was to start this Executive Insights podcast, featuring many of my colleagues from my LinkedIn network who have been very inspirational for our MBA and our BBA students. Just last week, I filmed an interview with the brand new head of business enterprise marketing for T-Mobile. And she's a colleague I've known for many years. She's risen through the ranks and now leads the corporate business enterprise marketing as a VP at T-Mobile. So that's the kind of caliber of people that I have access to through my network. And really what I want to do is to show students that, hey, you too could be head of a big data analytics company. You too might be able to be the next Steve Jobs. We don't know where he or she will come from. So to me, it was about, number one, building awareness for the school and our School of Business program. But number two, showing students what is possible. Because what I truly believe in education is if you can show people like themselves that have prospered throughout life in their careers and in corporate environment, if you can show them that it is possible to succeed in that marketplace, then I think you've done yourself a great service by basically inspiring others to have the courage to try, have the courage to travel, have the courage to work at some new companies that may not be your first choice. It's all about the ability for you to make a difference.
Is a fantastic way to do this, Mark, because I always believe when you see an example of success, no matter what, even in some level, a person gets inspired, motivated, and to your point, Mark, what you just said, thinking through some of these examples, the possibilities that are out there. It's so great that you are bringing that up in front of your students, and I'm sure it's not just the student segment who are benefiting from it. Anybody else who are interested might want to have a look and maybe, who knows, be inspired a little bit too.
That's the main thing. I mean, it's all about inspiring people to think sort of beyond themselves. And, you can find any of these Executive Insights podcasts on YouTube, but I also do highlight them through my LinkedIn connection. So any of your listeners and viewers would like to do that, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and join the fun.
Great point to bring up, Mark. Appreciate that. So, Mark, we have walked through some of the very impressive accomplishments you have had throughout the years professionally. So, my next question to you would be, if I may, outside work, outside professional experience, what is a fun fact about you that our viewer might be interested in or be inspired about?
Well, that's a great question. As a young man growing up in the United States, our native pastime here is Major League Baseball. And so growing up as boys and now as women, you always think about what you want to do in life. So, basically every boy wanted to play baseball. But I got involved in the early 1960s with music. And both my parents, again, from the Navy, they both had passions for music. And so I started studying the guitar, believe it or not, after I had seen the British rock group, the Beatles, on the old Ed Sullivan show back in 1964. And I think my mother would have preferred me to be a piano player like herself, but I was just attracted to the Beatles. I was attracted to the guitar. And so even throughout my career, I've managed to stay a little bit in tune, pardon the pun, with playing the guitar. But now that I have a little bit more free time, I'm trying to relearn all of those songs I used to be able to play earlier before. So it's a great way to keep your mind active and keeping your eye-hand coordination, relevant, if you might say.
Fantastic hobby you have, Mark. Even listening to you, I am inspired to try to play guitar listening to Beatles tune. Hey, maybe next time when we talk, we can start our conversation with you picking up your guitar and playing us a tune. Who knows?
We'd love to do that.
So, Mark, my next question to you is for our viewers. What is the best professional advice that you were given that might have helped you navigate through your professional life or even your life in general, if you want to share with us here today?
Sure. Well, I would say the one single piece of advice that I received from a manager of mine while at ExxonMobil, and I mentioned this earlier, he mentioned to me that, Mark, the world is changing so quickly. And he said, again, every 3 to 5 years, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to become somebody new. And, you can still become somebody new, even if you work in the same organization, be it a company, a nonprofit. It's all about, reskilling yourself, if you will, to take advantage of all of the opportunities. Maybe some opportunities may not come your way. However, if you have read the tea leaves and you have a good insight as to what may be coming, you may be able to actually create your own opportunity. And that's one of the reasons that I ended up at Deloitte from ExxonMobil. I didn't know a soul. I didn't know anybody at Deloitte. And I was looking on their website one day and came across from a partner at Deloitte. And I simply said to him, "May I send you my resume?" Now, this was some time ago. This was probably 15 years ago. So trying to find a job today would be a little bit different, but I simply said, "May I send you my resume?" He got back to me the same day. I sent him my resume. And, 10 years later, I had 10 years experience with Deloitte. So sometimes you kind of have to create your own opportunity rather than taking advantage of one that may come your way. So you have to be kind of, forward looking, if you will, to create your own opportunities through proper positioning and preparation.
Well, Mark, we are almost at top of our hour for this show. I really, really appreciate you joining our show today and sharing some of the great throughout your journey.
My pleasure. It's been a very awesome experience for me to share my experiences. Hopefully, this will inspire others to think about their own future and what role they want to play. So, thank you so much for allowing me to participate in your program.
Well, thank you everybody for joining our show today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Mark and that gave you a little bit insight on how to keep ourselves relevant in today's world, navigate through the environment around us, and taking that risk to achieve our goals. If you have any questions, please send it to NRB Connect TV and they will route the question as appropriate. At the end, I will say, live life with courage, empower each other, and transform life. Looking forward to our next conversation. Thank you.